online, we haven't decided yet, but also because it's a public meeting, there might be a request for the film. We just want to let you know that if you don't want to be on camera, that's totally fine. You can either keep your camera off or we can blur your face later. Just email us. Thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, Britt mentioned the agenda pretty clearly. We're just going to start with a few more opening remarks and some pieces that everyone can understand, to get a good understanding of what we're going into. So starting with PCCEP, Yolanda, go ahead.
Thank you, Taji. My name is Yolanda Salguero, and I am on the youth subcommittee as co-chair, and I work regularly with Taji and Britt. And yeah, I'm just going to cover a little bit about PCCEP. So our committee works with the mayor, Portland Police, and the community to achieve equitable policing, community engagement, and trust. We're working towards these 3 goals: to increase collaboration with communities and law enforcement, implement policies and practices that decrease incidents of use of force, and increase transparency and accountability within the Portland Police Bureau. Now, besides our youth subcommittee, we also have 3 other subcommittees. So I'm gonna just say those real quick. We have a racial equity subcommittee, a behavioral health subcommittee, and a settlement agreement and policy subcommittee. So if any of y'all are interested in any of the committees, including the youth subcommittee, we can get you to the right contact person so that you can be contacted to also come to those meetings. So thank you.
Okay, and then another partner organization, someone's been putting this together, is Youth Educating Police. So myself, Haji, Lana, and a few others are running this organization. We're a fully youth-led organization. You can see our mission statement there. And we were started in 2017 initially to find a way to train officers better to reduce confrontation and ultimate use of force between police and young people. More recently, though, we're also focusing on how policy can just reduce the number of interactions with officers altogether, just to, to see where officers maybe are needed, but also where they're not needed, and how to change things like that, policy and dialogue sessions.
Hi, I'm Alana Nyack, and I'm going to be talking about the Multnomah Youth Commission with Sion, and we're both members of the Youth Against Violence subcommittee of the larger Multnomah Youth Commission.
And Multnomah Youth Commission is the official youth policy body for the city of Portland. One of our main things is bringing youth voice and perspective to policymakers. MYC consists of actually 3 subcommittees: Education, Youth Voice, Transit Environmental Equity Alliance, and Youth Against Violence, which is YAV. And more specifically, YAV has conducted several focus groups and a survey on youth perceptions and interactions with police that Alana can go into more detail about.
Yeah, so collectively, the Youth Against Violence Subcommittee and Word is Bond, another organization that is working around policing that bridges the gap between Black men and law enforcement. We received a grant from the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, or GARE. And with this grant, we decided to conduct research about youth perceptions of police, specifically youth of color. With the help of researcher Jillian Gerard, we reached over 500 youth across Multnomah County, with 300 participating in listening sessions and the other 200 in the survey. After analyzing the data over last summer, we found common themes present throughout both the survey and the listening sessions. Youth from all over Multnomah County expressed the generalizations of identities and perspectives on both sides, the trauma and relationships gained from interactions, the lack of consistency in policing, the anticipation of future conflicts, and their feeling of hopelessness that the system was ever going to change. In efforts to utilize this research to implement change in the policing system, we have partnered with the Youth Subcommittee of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing to present policy recommendations to the mayor and the police chief that are informed by this data. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Awesome. And I didn't know if either Lakiana or another member of Word is Bond is here who wanted to mention their role in the MYC survey and the this work group as well. Is there anyone from Word is Bond who wants to talk about that? If not, we can, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Cool.
Yeah. Zykia Rivers. I'm a member of Word is Bond. First year was last year. I wasn't really involved in the program though. I think that was more Amari. But he's not here today. I don't know where he is. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now diving more into the purpose of the recommendation, as mentioned previously by some of my other peers, was to promote restorative outcomes and to repair harm not only between youth and police, but also the general community. And a lot of folks also have noted that there was repairing it is a concept that thinks of it like as if there was something that was already there. And so a lot of people have talked about trying to create rather than repair. So we're trying to, we formatted this way so that you can just understand where we're coming from. We also are working on redressing barriers to racial equity through this as well. So we also wanted to give a background on restorative justice. So we have another awesome PCCEP member and amazing trailblazer on our call as well, Marcia Perez, who's going to talk a little bit about restorative justice.
Yeah, so thank you all. My name is Marcia Perez. I serve on the Racial Equity Subcommittee for PCCEP and also work as the Youth and Gang Violence Prevention Coordinator for Multnomah County Juvenile. I see there's many people on this call who are greater experts in restorative justice than I am, but in a nutshell, restorative justice really wants to, it's a theory that really is trying to emphasize how to repair the harm, and but that in order to repair the harm, it includes the community, the victim, and the offender, the person who caused the harm and is impacted by the harm. It's an approach that I think law enforcement has had a difficult time as far as training goes, and so that I'm super supportive of the work that you all have done and figuring out how do we give law enforcement access to more restorative ways to intervene with the community that it serves.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that description. We'll have more opportunities if there's more questions about restorative justice to talk about that as well. Once again, if you remember from the beginning part, if you have any comments or questions going throughout before, you can put them in the chat as well, and we'll look through that during the conversation. Okay, so the next piece really around the process. We took a very expansive model in looking at doing this recommendation and doing our due diligence to the community and the best ways that we can make sure that, you know, the set after this is hopefully passed at the general PCCEP meeting on the 23rd, that we could implement this in the most fast and effective way possible. So we did research on a local and national basis, looking at other cities like Oakland and Colorado who've also implemented restorative justice. We interviewed a trainer from PPB's, a trainer from PPB's Youth Service Division who trained the Youth Service Division before it was disbanded, who was an external partner of PPB from the Juvenile Center specifically. We also talked with Momentum Alliance, or we talked with partners at Momentum Alliance, NEA, PPB, IPR, which is the Independent Police Review, and Lutheran Catholic Service to sort of get a comprehensive understanding not only of restorative justice as it exists and as the model of dialogue exists, but also how we could best implement that into the police bureau. So talking with folks who had the opportunity to get the restorative justice training that the Juvenile Center put together, but also to understand like if that worked, if it's the model that we're going to go with in trying to create this recommendation. Furthermore, we'll talk about this last piece as we move forward, but this whole forum and listening session and conversation will serve as the basis for a meeting we have with the mayor on the 26th of June, where we'll be talking about the best way we can move forward with this, and we're inviting community members to listen in on that as well. We'll talk at the end about that as well. Not only the mayor, but also hopefully the chief. We have the mayor secured though. So the next slide, I'm pretty sure will be with Yolanda. Or Britt.
Yeah, actually, I think. Yeah. So just wanted to now start moving into discussing this recommendation that we put together. I thought it might be helpful if I just read an excerpt of the summary of the recommendation. We're not going to be reading the rest of it just for time, and then we'll be going into some of the details just on the slideshow in a second, but I wanted to start by reading a little bit from the recommendation itself, just for context. So I'm starting in the middle, but here's what it says. Portland Police Bureau, the City of Portland, and other local system players have a duty to engage in practice and policy that mitigate harm from the initial point of contact through to any additional repercussions for both the victim and offender, as well as the community at large. For a bureau and city that purports to be at the forefront of 21st century policing, we, the enclosed recipients, demand solutions that utilize restorative justice and community-based approaches to policing. This should serve as just one step in the larger mission of divesting and diverting resources from punitive punishment to community responses informed by restorative justice. And then we talk a little bit about the research that we'll be getting into today. So there's sort of, before we go to the next slide, there's sort of three main aspects of this recommendation, and that's really intentional because if we just did the training, for example, that wouldn't be enough, and all these really work well together. So broadly, there's a training component that we're recommending for Portland Police Bureau officers. There's a recommendation that generally the city increases the amount of restorative justice programming available to people. And the final aspect is this platform or hotline we're mandating the city create that would actually allow young people to access those resources. And so, as we're going to describe, all three work really well in conjunction with each other. Next slide, please. And I'm going to bring Sion in here for this.
Yes, so for the Portland Police Bureau training, all officers will be required to have RJ training, whether or not they do that with youth or not. For the first year, the trainings, which is the initial training, it will consist of like the basic overview of what RJ is, just like the basic knowledge, philosophy, and practices. And then after that, it will also include training about an overview and the practice of the RJ platform, which will be talked about in a second. And subsequent trainings will be at least yearly, and these would be included with intentional partnerships with different community organizations, and also it would be encouraged for different communities where these organizations work to also have engagement and dialogue. And also this will be implemented in about a 6-month window, and each year there should be some sort of recognition on progress implemented into the yearly report that the training division does. And also PBB and the City of Portland will coordinate with PCCEP and the listed organizations through the entire implementation process. Also, the next part of the recommendation is the platform and the staff, which basically is, so the platform is for youth to basically request a restorative justice approach for an incident at their school or community. And this platform is just not for cases where PBB is like directly involved, but also for self-reported concerns that youth have, as long as it falls under the youth, under the geography or area of the Portland Police Bureau. And also, this platform should be a resource for you to also seek to redress other conflicts that are not just the normal police situation. And this design and release of this platform should be within 3 months after the recommendation is signed. And before this platform is released, Portland Police Bureau should have a outreach plan to make sure that all youth within Portland Public Schools and outside of Portland Public Schools are aware and they are taught how to use it. And this should be dismantled by the fall, regardless of whether or not we have in-person learning or digital learning. And then for the apps, and also the City of Portland would also work with the Independent Police Review or the Office of Youth Violence Prevention to handle and respond to all the submissions, and that will probably lead to an RJ staff or a new RJ coordinator to work and lead that. And also Portland Police Bureau should make sure with the Independent Police Review that any of the complaints or concerns that you've say or report that involve police should be handled through just IPR and not anybody from the Portland Police staff or law enforcement employees. And then finally, for the action plan, the City of Portland and Portland Police Bureau coordinations with stakeholders to ensure capacity and growth for current RJ programs. And they will also report back to PCCEP with an action plan. Basically, PBB will go through and review their current restorative justice programs and determine where staffing and resources should best be directed to so they can implement more or increase more restorative responses compared to punitive responses in terms of youth incidents. And also the Portland Police Bureau should report back to PSAP and construct an action plan and increase capacity. They should finish the review period no later than around 4 months after the recommendation is signed, and then present an action plan for the following 6 months.
Yeah, thank you so much for all that. Definitely gonna take questions on all these things in a second, but just to provide a little more context into how everything is connected, I mentioned that they're connected, and they really are. So, for example, if you think about the fact that SROs were just removed from schools, well, we're considering that, and we're making sure this recommendation also it was in response to that. And so we have this training for Portland Police Bureau officers. But as we put together this platform, we want to make sure that PPS administrators and other school administrators know how to use it. So if that takes conversations or trainings or proper outreach from the city, we're going to make sure, and we wrote this in our proposal, that that is also considerations that made, because it only works if everyone is advocating for you all, for youth, and sharing this resource so you actually have it available. So that's just one note I wanted to make. And Todd, do you have anything else to add here?
No, yeah, definitely. I think specifically in regards to the third part, it really is all about pushing towards more restorative outcomes. Need for punitive outcomes that lead to carceral situations. We're trying to focus on how can we avoid the need for, a young person to be brought into a system of recidivism. And when we spoke to, for example, yesterday, we spoke with someone who worked with PALF and Unite Oregon on their $50 million divestment plan. We were talking specifically about, how do we do this without the influence of PPB and the influence of officers? And that's really where the action plan comes into, and the other stakeholders at hand. It's really about how do we work in conjunction to look at alternatives to the need for police to interact specifically in schools or specifically with young people in situations that aren't, related to serious or detrimental crimes that are existing. So that's really the whole focus of the recommendation, how we can move towards restorative outcomes and alternative approaches. And so from that point, hopefully we didn't go too fast through it and we can go back through it, but we can go back to other slides if people have other questions about that. However, we'll lead it to this part, which is basically where we're going to open up the room a little more and allow folks to give their input on this recommendation. I've been seeing comments come in and we'll talk about the other pieces as well. So we'll start with the recommendation pieces, any input from that, and then we'll move towards looking at other recommendations and other areas that we should be focusing on as a subcommittee or as just a group that's been working together in general. So. We can start with the questions that were in the chat. Let's see. First, it was mentioned about the cost effectiveness of it all and how long the training is for. So we mentioned how long the training is for. The first training would exist when the in-service occurs this year or the beginning of next year. Most of their in-service goes January to June, and so it would be implemented during that period of time. And the first year is focused, as we mentioned earlier, on the background of it and the model of restorative justice as it would work across different systems. And then the following years would focus on partnering with one or multiple community partners and organizations to do other focuses on restorative justice. So whether that's offsite scenarios or whether that's looking at, young people who are in schools versus dealing with situations of gangs, like whatever it may be, it really is a matter of working with the community organizations to do that. Our recommendation is that it should be happening and that there should be a task force created to do that on a city level, and then they work with the respective organizations to make that happen. And I would give the same answer around cost effectiveness of it all. If we talk about then in a large budget of PPB, we're not saying give more money to PPB to do this. We're saying the city of Portland should be using the resources they have to look at alternative means of needing to give police more funding, but rather the city should focus on giving the funding to the community organizations that be working with them to develop. Even the first training would be developed with community partners. So we'll share the recommendation. I think I said in the chat, we'll share the recommendation either later today or tomorrow with the whole details of all of it. And it'll be on the PCCEP's website, which I linked in the chat. Some sort of guiding questions I could maybe give, and you can sort of, not only yes or no's, they're more expansive than that, is like areas where we could improve. Do we have enough information? Are we asking enough of the city of Portland and the police bureau in regards to restorative justice? Is the timeline effective? Where else could we go from here?
And then I think Barb was asking about who we spoke to. Maybe I could start and talk a little more about that, and then we can go from there if other people are coming up with questions. Yeah, so we spoke to a lot of people and coming up with this recommendation. I mean, first of all, there were a few partner organizations that we've described that like we're actually the ones coming up with some of the language and the writing behind it. So that's PCCEP, who's presenting this forum today, the Multnomah Youth Commission, and specifically their Youth Advisory Committee, Council, and then Word is Bond, who you heard from, Youth Educating Police. Those are sort of like the four partner organizations that put it together. But then we reached out to a bunch of other employees or like city people to get their perspective on how this would actually look if it were implemented, because we don't necessarily have that knowledge. We wanted to make sure that it was realistic going to some of the questions that we've gotten to. So we spoke to, for example, the Independent Police Review. And really that conversation was about the platform, because, if you're not aware, they already have their own platform for taking in community concerns about police, but often they don't receive as much information. They don't have as much communication with young people. So that's sort of what we're trying to fix. And they said that they thought this would be so that was major stakeholders to talk to. In terms of like understanding justice and the way it works here in Portland, when it comes to training, we spoke to a few individuals. We spoke to Morgan from Lutheran Community Services. She has been involved in the training for officers, and she also has a deep background of sort of justice. And so she was able to help us think about what that could look like. And then we spoke to, who else do we speak to about the training, Taji? I forget people's affiliations.
We also spoke to Lisa Bates, who works at Portland State University, who worked on the People's Plan with, I believe, Urban League, and she also helped out with the language and policy that PALF and Unite Oregon put together. I think.
And then Captain or Lieutenant Quackenbush, former Captain.
Commander Quackenbush.
Some position in the police bureau.
He
Anyway,
used to work. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
No,
I was going to
finish the sentence.
Sorry. Yes, talking over each other. He was involved in the training for SROs around restorative justice that they received this year, and he also has specifically for PPP on their behalf attended conferences around restorative justice. So he knows a lot about that, and so it was a resource as we thought about how this could be expanded to all officers. And then there was one other person who, again, I'm forgetting their name, but someone else.
That's really good, you guys. That's really good. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Have you guys ever been to the local public safety coordinating council, LIPSIC?
Not in our capacity as PCCEP members, but in our capacity as directors of youth educating police, we have, yes, worked specifically with Strategy 6, which is their gang violence, youth, police, and community strategy, along with their Strategy 3, which focuses on school and police officers, which I don't know what the focus is right now with the PBB, but I think other counties still have SROs. So yes, we have spoken with them as well.
And NYC, or specifically YAB, has biannual meetings with Lipstick as well. In this presentation, that was focus groups and presentation was also the Lipstick committee as well.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because of the involvement of the sheriff's department along with PPB. It seems to be a tandem relationship when it comes to how folks are treated on the inside versus the outside. So I just wanted to know if your discussions had gotten anywhere with the entire justice system in our communities, because it's so large.
Yeah, I can respond to that. So in regards to what you're talking about, Amy, we didn't speak to someone at the sheriff's department necessarily. Our goal is to have it be mostly because they're county affiliated, so we don't have jurisdiction in Multnomah County as much as we do with PPB and the city of Portland. However, the system, they're still a system player, and they still, they're the ones who, run the juvenile center and run the criminal justice center in general. So yeah, that's definitely a partner. That's a conversation as well. So we've talked, when we spoke with Ross from IPR, he's connecting us to the new district attorney, Mike Schmidt, who Ross mentioned would be an important person to speak to in being able to establish this. It's sort of like we're not necessarily, we didn't meet with every single person. What we met with was the folks who we thought we would need to initially meet with to best make sure that we could implement this correctly. So once it's hopefully passed and brought forward to the mayor on the 26th, we'll sort of outline where we want to go from here. And I think we did that quite well in the recommendation itself. Talks about a task force that the city of Portland is going to work to create and how we can do this, from the second it's passed all the way until the implementation periods. And then I think there was a few questions in the comments. I see, how would you measure success from Representative Lawrence Spence or one of her staff? It talked in regards to the recommendation, restorative justice has been proven on a research level to mitigate harm, mitigate the use of force, and stops data. It also stops the need for punitive punishment in regards to young people specifically, but also all people that officers would be interacting with. So we've seen it work on a research level, and then implementing such things we would also know it's successful if there's less young people who are involved in the criminal justice, and there are less young people who are involved with use of force, specifically in the city. That would sort of be how we'd be able to see that, and that's a thing you can start seeing as, the county most likely, I'm assuming, puts out reports on these sorts of things on, how many individuals are being adjudicated for situations. And so definitely, and then specifically in schools as well. So because there's no youth service division, any incident of enough severity that a school administrator even calls, and that's really where we're trying to get it, is why does an administrator call a officer in an instance of either criminal or bad behavior that leads to things like expulsion, suspensions, and even sometimes adjudication or arrests. Why don't we try to stop that initial point, but also even if it does get to that, you can see all of those things on, I think, PPS's report card they put out on a yearly basis talks about that as well. In regard, Michelle said, share an example of how things would work when a youth is first involved, referred, describing types of behavior. Wait, is this multiple question, whether or not it's called? Please share an example of how things would work when a youth is first involved or referred, describing types of behaviors. Yeah, okay, I think that makes sense. And Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, or you can say something. But from my understanding of the question you put forward, it's really asking how will utilize the platform we've described. Is that what I'm getting at? Say like yes or no in the comments.
I think this is sort of about like what sorts of situations this actually applies to, and like walking people through what that looks like.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, why don't I start, and then you can also add anything that you have. So I mean, really, we want this to be an option for like all low-level offenses. So it could be like an actual crime, maybe like theft or robbery or whatever. We think that at this point in our lives that should not be something that just like goes directly to the juvenile justice system or anything like that. That there should be a restorative process. And so, like any restorative justice program, it does take some willingness for the victim to work with the offender, but we're going to try to press to make that an option whenever possible. And then, so instead of staff right now from Multnomah County, for example, the Sheriff's Office, the Juvenile Justice Service, instead of them handling this, it would then be this RJ coordinator that we're suggesting the city employ, that they would handle it. They would try to mediate things with the young person and with the victim as well, if there is a victim in this case. But I also just want to make this point again, I think we said this earlier, that this isn't necessarily just for crimes, especially classic crimes that PBB or the Sheriff's Office might be responding to. We also see this as a general way to resolve other disputes that right now PBS might be giving to or think about giving to the Portland Police Bureau, that can really also just be handled through restorative justice. So like disputes or confrontations, and it doesn't have to involve a classic type of crime or even involve, what was I going to say, a police officer. That could be the case, but it doesn't have to be. It could just even be between two young people where there might be a better restoration of trust in the community between them and others if restorative justice were employed. So, you know, it's pretty expansive in that way because we're trying to address both sides of that. Taj, you want to add to that, or is that?
Yeah, clarity on that is that the training provided at PPB would, and I think this was a question by representative as well, around how will we know the restorative justice trainings are work. I mean, it's similar to how do you know if any of their trainings are working, especially if people are still, you know, if use of force and officer-involved shootings are still occurring. And that's really at the root of where we'd be able to see if these things are working, is if the numbers in regards to incidents involving young people are going down, then that's going down, or go to zero, then that's how we know it's working. And really the training focuses on getting officers the correct tools to not need to be interacting or trying to solve a problem, rather than using other tactics of doing that. So back to Michelle's question, it's really about, you know, I have an interaction with an officer and I get pulled over, instead of the officer saying like, oh, you're going to go through this means of getting a ticket, or even worse, you're going to get arrested because you were doing, you know, X thing, going too fast or whatnot. You're using a restorative approach to that, a restorative dialogue that creates the ability for the young person to not have to be arrested or have something on their record. Then they'll have the opportunity to just to figure out the problem, why they did that in the first place. And I think maybe that's not the best example of it, but another example I've used frequently is around if a young person's robbing a store or stole something from a store, then they'll have the opportunity to have a dialogue with the store owner and the individual and the young person, and figuring out why that was wrong, why, you know, what led to the root cause of the person from the store in the first place. That's really what it's getting to. I think, is that, Michelle, does that get to where you're this?
Michelle, I just saw your comment. Yes, I can send you a draft of the recommendation right now. Barb, I did send it to you. Did it not go through? Sent it a few minutes ago, or 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, you said you did, but I don't see it. I guess I can. Did you send it to What Is Right 88?
Yeah, I sent you. I just copy and pasted that one, and it says it's
Okay.
sent. Maybe check your spam or something. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll pay attention.
Is there any young people on the call? I really appreciate these comments from some of the adults, but I would love to hear from some young people about, if you had an incident with an officer and the approach that they took was, very focused on, writing the report and getting out of the situation or just finishing it, and rather, that wasn't a very helpful way of going about doing it. Would you see this as a alternative approach that may be beneficial or helpful for an individual, for yourself, or for someone else? To Amy's comment, we're not talking about creating a new department.
Hey Taji, this is Theo here. I wonder if any youth would be interested in sharing any of their experiences that could help guide some of the thoughts around recommendations, some of their experiences with police officers, some of their experience in restorative justice processes in the past. Any kind of experience could help guide the conversation. I know it's oftentimes not the most fun to be the first young person to speak or the first person to speak or whatever, but if you could share about yourself, I think that would help move the conversation as well. Just a suggestion.
Hi, I'm Sine. I'm 15, and I think that I like the idea of like owners of like a store being able to like sit with students. I know I have a couple of my peers that have ran across maybe some unjust situations in stores before, and sometimes there have been situations where I've had peers that like have maybe like let's just say like stolen from the store, but I think sometimes you have to like realize the circumstances that people come from as well. And so when like I think more so when police get involved, oftentimes what is the case is that students don't really realize exactly all the trouble that they can be getting themselves into, especially black students or black youth. And they sometimes they don't have the right people to talk to them about that kind of like they don't have the right adults to go to about those kind of circumstances. And so if instead of getting like the police involved in the situation and sometimes like risking black youth getting put in a unjust situation with the police, sitting down with like as Taj was saying with the manager might help to create more of like a dialogue and like maybe come from more of a place of understanding, I guess.
Thank you so much for your input.
Yeah.
I have, oh, yep, perfect. He just jumped on. I have a young man who I want to have him share his story. and this kind of goes back to my original support for this recommendation, but I think that there needs to be dialogue between youth, offended people, people who are victims or have been offended in the community, and also the police. So, Jayzion, I know you just jumped on the line. If you just want to introduce yourself and just share the basics of your story without going into like too much details that you don't want to share, but just about the context, and then I can kind of follow it up with after you shared.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Jayzion Props. I'm 19. I've been a Word is Bond member for going on a year now. So, one day I had lost my cat, and it's my son. I love my cats. I consider myself to be like an animal father or whatever. So, I was looking in my neighborhood for my cat because I know he doesn't like to stray too far. And I was approached by somebody who lives in the neighborhood, and they were just asking me like what I was doing there and why I was looking around in their neighborhood. But at the point that he seen me, I was just sitting down on the curb, like on the sidewalk with my dog. And so he started telling me to leave, that it was his community, he owned the community, and that he was gonna call the police on me. So me not thinking like anything would actually come of it, I stay sitting. I asked him politely to mind his business. I know he's not an authoritative figure, so I don't have to answer anything that he's asking me. He proceeded then to record me, and then called the police on me and told them that I coughed in his face and all this other stuff. And long story short, I ended up being detained for looking in my own neighborhood for my cat while sitting on the curb.
And can you follow up just a little bit at the end about the other interactions you had with the police, and then like afterwards? And I think there might have been some stuff the day after too about them still following you or being around.
Oh yeah, they came back to his house to talk to him for something, and I was outside cleaning my back porch, and I just realized that I was like, wow, okay, so he's talking to them. So my wife decided to take out her phone and take a picture of it. So the cop was about to jump over the fence and was telling me, he essentially was like, oh, okay, so you want to take pictures? And he said, I got something for you, or something along those lines, like he was threatening me.
So, yeah, and so, Jayzion being in Word is Bond and having, done a lot of community work and stuff like that, there's a triangle of harm there. So the community member felt threatened for whatever reason for Jayzion's presence being there. Jayzion, when the police arrived, didn't feel heard from the police, and now Jayzion he was like charged with like not a misdemeanor, but something like even slighter than that. And so what happens? This happens to Black youth and youth of color all the time, where something happens, the police get involved, and then everybody just kind of goes their separate ways. The youth are usually given some kind of misdemeanor or whatever it is, or in some cases even worse, and there's really no dialogue there. So it's not only like it's like a restorative justice framework, but then like even further, I would love to have the community member and Jayzion be able to sit down and talk, because if they knew the work that Jayzion did, or at least heard his perspective and how he felt, I think that there could be a lot of healing in there. And then for the community member to share to Jayzion what he felt, in that situation. But then also for the officers, and I think this is a key link that never gets discussed, as how the officers, a lot of times when they get involved in these situations, cause further harm. And there was 2 officers there, one of whom Jayzion got along with very well, and the other one who Jayzion felt was not listening to his side of the story. And so, and I hear these stories from youth all the time about engagements with officers and not being able to hear their side of the story. And so that is my vision with this, or what I would like to see happen, is that there be able to be youth voice in that process. And then we could use that, and I think you guys had mentioned this already, use that instead of like having a misdemeanor or whatever, any charges that were put, that this be an option to have those charges dropped, using facilitators who either know the youth or are in the community work, like Northwest.
Resolutions
gosh,
Northwest.
Yes, Solutions Northwest. Thank you. There's a number of groups that could be able to facilitate these depending on the circumstances, the culture of the person who's in it, whether they're Latino, Black, or whatever. But that's what I would see, because that's part of the whole problem, is that there is a broken chain of dialogue in here. So thanks for allowing that space. And Jay-John, thanks for sharing that story on the fly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Yeah. And that also reminded me of something. I was just scrolling back up in the chat. I saw, I mean, Amy, you've left a lot of great comments. Thank you so much for helping us think through things. But specifically, I'm going to move. Someone else is on the call here. But specifically, you made a comment about not trying to create more bureaucracy in the government, create a new office. And I hear that, but I just want to answer that by saying that we were talking about maybe one restorative justice coordinator as someone who's independent from the police bureau. That was important to us. So it's not someone, not a police officer or even a police staff. And this person would work with this platform that we're designing. But as Lockdown pointed out, that a lot of the people who would be doing the restorative justice also wouldn't be part of the police bureau. And they could be these existing community organizations that we've already talked to, like Lutheran community services, who have done previous training. So that's what I was trying to say earlier. Maybe it wasn't clear, but I hope that helps too.
It's really looking at like why do we criminalize young people for their mistakes, and then it leads to like a system of recidivism and a system of and if you're not familiar with recidivism, it's this when you commit a crime and you recommit another crime after that, after whether it's after you get out of jail or juvie, or it's the recycle of the same system that you're being involved in, because of the factors that come in to play when you get involved in the system in the first place. Whether it's as simple as a young person who, gets into a fight and is suspended for 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks they commit a series of crimes just because they're not in school or somewhere that they could be getting their education, or they don't have a job and they can't be doing that. It's all of those one thing happened that was bad, and instead of creating a dialogue around, why did those two young people fight in the first place, or if the school administrator had the necessary tools in place to not have to, suspend the young person or involve an officer, then those things all could have been avoided, and future crimes could have been avoided. But the reason this is an issue, and it sort of is around the conversation of a school to prison pipeline, is because we don't have those systems at play in a lot of institutions and places. And another example I forgot to mention was when we were doing our research, Vancouver, they specifically have, I don't know if it's all of Washington, it might just be the Vancouver city itself, but they have a specific program where when you commit theft, theft from like a store or at a certain amount, I believe, you can go to this program they offer at their juvenile center, where you can take a class on why did you steal, or what did you do, and then have the opportunity to get that expunged from your record when you turn 18. That's something that can be life-changing to individuals who commit that one crime when they're 15 of stealing a candy bar from a store, or something more severe than that. And then when they're 18 and they're trying to apply to college, a lot of colleges say we won't let you come here because you have a crime on your record, or you have a misdemeanor in your record. So really it's about creating more areas of success, and that's how you see sort of how you measure not only the success on a long-term basis when there's more, when there's more Black and brown people going and graduating from high school and enrolling in college, when there's more job access to those same populations, when there's less to no use of force, or incidents of or lower or exponentially no incidents of stops. Those are how you measure success, and it's not something we could implement in 6 months and then see success right then and there. It's really about, if we're changing larger systems, you measure that on a long-term basis. And that's something that YEP independently does, but we don't do it. We're not trying to implement the systems to measure that as much as we are having community organizations doing that. So we can pivot if people aren't, if no one else had comments or questions or things they wanted to express around the recommendation. We wanted to open the floor for individuals who wanted to suggest other recommendations, other issues that young people, you know, deserve to have a platform and a voice to share those with our elected officials, with our city leaders. So we're opening the floor up for any and all things related to young people, solutions that you would like to see, policies that should be changed, you know, should all, you know, like, I'm not going to necessarily suggest anything specifically, but yeah, the floor is sort of open. Let's specifically have Black and Indigenous youth of color talk first, and then all youth of color, and then all youth, and just like try to have a system where we're looking at the people who are most disenfranchised speaking first, and then we'll go back from there. Yeah.
I also just wanted to quickly say that at the end of this, we'll be talking about next steps and some other meetings you can come to, but also just to leave our emails. And if you like, you know, if you don't feel comfortable sharing now, which I totally get, please reach out to us later. We can have a conversation on the side too.
Any young people? I mean, we have sort of step to recommend things to the mayor and the chief of police. And so if you have recommendations of things that you've been seeing about, oh, am I freezing? Is my stable?
A little bit.
Is it okay,
well,
Britt? Are you hearing me?
Heard you well enough. I mean, you're just asking, yeah, for other people to share. And I also,
Okay.
I liked Amy.
Let me know. Yeah, I'm just saying that mind, and so.
Okay. I'll just continue for a second. I also liked Amy's comment. If any of you even just want to talk about why you joined the call in the first place, why you think this work is necessary, it doesn't have to be specifically like about policies you want to see change, but just what brought you to this meeting, and what are some of your experiences? That's also good to share.
Sorry, my thing cut off. I'll just not share until we're wrapping up. Any other thoughts, opinions? We can, you can post them in the chat, but you could also email them to any of us. I think we have, okay, Theo, could you post the email in the chat of PCCEP to use? Alrighty then. Let's pivot to Representative Lawrence Benz's current work happening on the state level. I'm going to re-share my screen so you can, oh, I'm not co-host anymore. Could I get permission to share my screen?
Taji, you should be able to share your screen now. I made you the co-host.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I was just checking. Okay. Yes.
Do you still having some connection problems,
Hello,
Taji?
is it good? Am I?
Yeah.
Is
a little bit, yeah.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Taji.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Taji, and thank you to all of you for being here today and for sharing your stories and for being a part of all of the various organizations that you represent. My name is Akasha Lauren Spence. I'm the state representative for House District 36. That means that I represent downtown Portland, Old Town, South Waterfront, OHSU, all the way back up to Northwest Portland and Southwest, all the way to Multnomah Village and Hillsdale. I'm a part of in the legislature, there are not a lot of people of color, but we have about 8 of us now, and we are part of a People of Color caucus. And so some of the things that some of the legislators who are much older than I am and who have been in the legislature for a decade or more have been proposing police accountability bills for a long time. They've been proposing them since they got in the door, right? Because these are some of the issues that are very, very pertinent in our community and very important. And so the bills, given this moment, given the gravity of this moment, along with the disproportionate impacts that our communities have been feeling through COVID-19, and as well as the moment of protest and change, right? We're asking for radical change and a radical reimagining of the social contracts, right? What does it mean for Black and Brown people to be police? And what does it mean for them to be accountable to us, right? And not just the state organizations that employ them. And so one of the 3, right now we're proposing 3 actions. One is Senate Bill 1567, which is basically prohibits an arbitrator from lessening a disciplinary action. So if you look at some of the ways that police have been held accountable, they can get a ruling, and then in arbitration with their superior, with their supervisors, and with their unions, they can then get an action that is of a lesser charge, right? So instead of facing a larger disciplinary action like being fired or being suspended without pay or losing their position or losing a promotion, they'll get something like administrative leave for 2 weeks, paid administrative leave, right? And that's something that we cannot continue to happen because it doesn't do anything to disincentivize police misconduct. The second action that we're proposing for this the special session that should be happening in the next month or so, is to have the Attorney General be their office, be the people who investigate police misconduct when it is an excessive or deadly use of force. So that means that right now, it is up to the police themselves to investigate their own misconduct. And by nature of that, we can tell that there are so many loopholes and so many ways in which they're not going to investigate themselves to the fullest extent of the law. And so giving an outside party that's not just a third party, but somebody who is beholden to the public and to the citizenry, that's the Attorney General's office, giving them the job of doing that kind of investigative work and making sure that they're the ones who are looking into the entire bureau and all of the circumstances surrounding an excessive use of force or deadly use of force. The third action is putting together a work group in which we will look into more excessive uses of force and deadly physical force, and when police are using it to prevent an escape. And so this work group will come together, it'll be bipartisan. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get a sneeze. I have allergies today, so forgive me. It's gonna be bipartisan, so they're gonna have Democratic as well as Republican members of this work group, and they're gonna look into all of the ways in which deadly use of force and excessive use of force is mandated or okayed or used in police jurisdictions across the states, and figure out how to quell those and figure out how to disincentivize those things. Another thing that we are looking at, and those are for the next 30 days, right, in the special session. So just to give you a little context, 2020, we already had the regularly scheduled short session that was from February to March. It was 6 weeks. And so due to coronavirus and due to, this momentum around police accountability and justice, we're going to go into a special session to handle some of these bills that need to be worked on right now. And so a special session means just that it wasn't going to be, it wasn't mandated. It's not something that's constitutional. It's something that the governor is going to call us in for so that we can take care of these things that are pertinent. We're also going to be looking at advocating for reform to the cash bail system, as well as how COVID-19 has disrupted people's right to due process. The judiciary has asked for bills that enable them to push back the dates that people would have needed to be seen by. So let's say you are already an adult or juvenile in custody, and you have the Constitution mandates that you have, or the statute mandates that you have 180 days from the time of your arrest to the time that you first see a judge or your sentence, or you have your trial. They're asking to push that deadline back due to the fact that they cannot operate the courts under normal circumstances due to COVID-19. So we're looking into that and making sure that it's not inequitable, because anytime that you have a system or an opportunity to delay somebody's opportunity to go in front of a judge or to get sentencing and do things like that, we know who's gonna have a disproportionate impact on that. And we know that our communities are already facing a disproportionate impact to COVID-19 exposure in prisons. The other thing that is very important to me that we look into is creating a database for police accountability. So as it stands right now, a police officer at PPB could have infraction after infraction, and instead of being fired, he or she could resign and go to the West Lynn Police Department, as has happened before, and continue to use excessive use of force and continue to be racist and sexist and misogynist, or whatever it is that they're doing in their job that they should not. And they have this ability to move around from jurisdiction to jurisdiction without being held accountable for their actions, or without any barriers to them continuing to quote unquote protect and serve or be a police officer. And so one of the things that I think is important is for us to catalog police misconduct and make that catalog public, make that information public, so that we can hold our police jurisdictions accountable and ensure that they are no longer hiring people who are explicitly racist and using excessive use of force and doing things that are detrimental to our communities. So that's our legislative work, and I encourage all of you to, if any of that interests you, or if you feel like there is something that we should be working on a state level, please reach out to my office. I'll put my email in the chat. Reach out to us, and it's not easy. It's not hard to make a bill. You can have an idea, you can have an experience and say, well, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. How can I make this a law so that make what happened to me against the law so that this can't happen to anybody else? How can I hold police accountable on a different level, you know? And how can I make restorative justice even a state mandated practice? Things like that. So all of that I can help you work through. We can go through the legislative process and try to get those things made into bills. The other thing that we've been doing is working with Taji and some other youth to think about this moment that we're in. And a lot of you have been going to the protest and thinking about, you know, that you want people to hear your voice, right? It's not just about showing up every night and to what end, right? You want people to hear your voice. You want people to know what it is you're protesting for. And so these young people that I meet with almost every Tuesday have come up with a social media campaign that we're going to launch soon that's called #HearMyVoicePDX. And it's going to be about helping you guys to use your own platforms to tell your story, to talk about why police accountability, police reform or abolition is important to you, and have us understand your side, whether you're at a protest or you're doing things like being on Multnomah Youth Commission or you're at PCCEP or whatever it is you're doing. Let us know what's important to you and show us how this will impact your life and your community and tell us your stories. So I'm just very grateful that you guys were able to give me this time to talk to you. And I am so appreciative of all the work that you're doing, and any way that I can support you and continue to help to amplify and elevate your voices, I am here for it always.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Representative Lauren Spence. I think, yeah, definitely been an honor working with you. Oh, glitching again. Is it? Okay. Definitely been an honor working with you over the last 2 or so weeks now. From this point, we wanted to close with, this part will also be good. Young people in the room under the age of 24, if you could send your emails to Theo, and or if you don't mind them in the chat, you can just post them there. And in order to get your gift card for participating and giving your perspectives on the call today. Sorry, it's not letting me move my thing. Yeah, so make sure to post that or send that to Theo, which is under the, it's the awesome dude with the luscious hair we all wish we had. Cool. And then the last piece, the next pieces of it all. The June 23rd is when our official PCCEP meeting will be, where we'll vote on the recommendation and discuss it, which is at 5:30. All of this that'll be posted on the website, or the PCCEP's website. And then June 26th, as we mentioned, at 3, we'll be meeting with some state leaders, including the mayor and hopefully the chief, to discuss the recommendation and the best ways and steps to move forward with it. And I want to bring up some of those things like measuring the success and cost effectiveness, and how we can use, best and most creative ways to make this work. And so we'd love to have some young people in the room to listen in on that as well. We'll be synthesizing what we heard today in order to share it with those folks as well. And then on July 6th is our next, it should say 4 p.m., not 4 m, but 4 p.m. We'll be having our youth subcommittee monthly meeting, which is, I believe, most of the time is every first Monday of the month. And so would love to have some new voices there. PCCEP's accepting alternates, I believe. I don't want to accidentally misquote that, but yeah, accepting alternates. Britt and I's term ends soon, and I think we're oh, and there's also Jamari, but we'd love to have more young people on PCCEP. So yeah, thank you everyone who had the opportunity to come. Thank you, Representative, and thank you all the amazing folks who helped put this together. I definitely think this is just the beginning, and I loved hearing all the amazing feedback that you had to give. I think that's it. I don't think there's other slides to it. I'll stop sharing my screen though. But yeah. And I think that was, Britt, did you have any final, or Yolanda, or anyone have any comments?
Oh, yeah, thank you, everyone. And yeah, please stay in touch. There's more to come on this. It's moving quickly, but we want to talk to you anytime. We can do a call, like informal or whatever, to make this happen. Thank you, though.
And don't forget the meeting on Sunday.
Right.
Everybody needs to be there for the special meeting on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll be doing a final listening session, I believe, wrapping up like a 3-part situation PCEP's been doing every Sunday, trying to get the perspectives of the community heard about the protests, about just generally the national conversation around policing and defundment and everything like that. So there's a Sunday meeting about that as well. Yeah, anyone else can.
Yeah, this is Theo again. I want to thank everyone for being on the call. My name is Theo Latta. I'm PCEP staff. I know reciprocity is important in all endeavors, but especially when you're involving youth. So please give me your email just as a thank you. We want to give you this gift card, but also one of the objects of PCEP is to lift the voice of the community, and youth folk don't get lifted that often for whatever reason. I think it's because us as older folk, our brains go a little bit when we get older, and I blame that. But please, your opinions are incredibly valuable, and I appreciate you all being here, and I look forward to hearing from you more in the future and learning from you all. So thank you again.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what my colleague shared. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's after 5, and for those of you who have already worked an 8-hour shift like me, I greatly appreciate it. I'm taking notes tonight, and I've got mostly everybody's email if you put your email in the chat. So thank you.
And with that being said, I think we are going to call this this meeting to an end. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you all have a great rest of the afternoon and a great weekend as well. Thank you. We'll be make sure to come on the 26th if you're interested. We'll be posting on the PCEP site about that. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Taji.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Taji. Thank you, Britt.
Thanks, you guys. Hey, Taji, did you go away?
Thanks, y'all. Peace.
Oh, I'm still here, Barb. I don't know about Taji. I can relay a message, though.
Okay. Well, I still haven't read through the thing, but
Yeah.
can I suggest you guys change the behavioral health line that I just got to in it to
Sure.
say, hold on. Where is it? Where is it?
Is this in the
It says
summary,
mental-
or
Huh?
where is this in the recommendation?
I'm looking. I'm
Oh, okay.
looking.
Thank you.
I just
Sorry
got
about
there
that.
and I was like, ah. It
Okay.
says mental health and behavioral. Here it is. So right after the bold part on
Right.
the,
Yeah.
okay, so
Okay. Right here. Yes, we can change
yeah,
that.
where it says living with mental or behavioral health conditions,
Yes, I see that
behavioral
now. Yeah.
health is mental health and substance use disorder. So that's being like repetitive
Okay. Thank you.
in a way. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. So should I just take this out right here?
I would take out the mental, I would suggest just taking out the mental or, so
Okay. Yeah.
living with behavioral health conditions.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure. There'll be more of that, I'm sure. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm the
Yeah. No, please. Just email us. You have all our emails. Like, email any of us with any comments, and we can make those changes.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Or
Thank you.
everybody could disagree with me. Anyway,
Right.
take care, y'all.
Thank you. You too. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I didn't even know I was still here on my phone. So I turned the audio off.
Oh.
I'm gonna stop the recording. So thank you.
Yes, please.